What's that permission to play one media object thing?
That's probably Mike's video. I think we'll be okay. Okay.
Okay.
We are starting here. 3, 2. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our virtual roadshow rug here. Thank you for being flexible with our little shift from in-person to virtual. I'm Nick Frank. I'll be the producer, moderator for today's rug. I do have a couple housekeeping items to get to before we jump into our discussions and our presentations. Today's rug should take about an hour. That does include the Q&A portion. As of right now, everybody is on mute, but you can still participate if you have any questions, comments during this presentation. There's a Q&A panel. So if you have any questions for our presenters, feel free to throw them in there. And then the recordings and the slides will be available in the next couple of days. Those will be sent out in the next few days for everybody. So if you see the rug, see the presentation, want to share it with some colleagues, feel free to do that in the next few days when we send out the presentation. Here's our agenda for today. We are going to do, this is our introduction and our welcome. Then I'm going to turn it over to Doug Reichert. He's going to talk about Trimble's asset lifecycle management, running through that. Then we've got Luke and Joe are going to go over, there's going to be the bulk of our presentation today. Mike is going to give a little product roadmap with CityWorks, and then we'll wrap it up at the end with Q&A. So really excited. We've got a good time for this morning to kind of chat, and we do want this to be as, a little bit of a back and forth as we can. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to as many as we can throughout the presentation. And with that, I'm just going to hand it right over to Doug.
Good morning, everybody. Nick, am I looking like I'm on camera and you can hear me okay?
I got you. I got you loud and clear, Doug.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Hello. Good morning. My name is Doug Reichert. I'm the Industry Strategy Director for our state and federal government with Trimble's owner and public sector business. Super grateful for the opportunity to meet with you and appreciate everyone's time. I wish I was in the room with you so we could share a bad sandwich and tell some war stories, but this time we're gonna do it this way. But I do love the Minneapolis area and always appreciate my time there too. Asset lifecycle management. Oh boy, everybody hears about it these days, and all of my Trimble's contemporaries, I should say, have kind of their own flavor of what that actually means. I'm going to share kind of what Trimble's vision of what that means is. It could be a new term to some of you, and to the rest of you probably heard it a million times. The way we think of it is an approach to capital projects that kind of starts with the end in mind, the actual asset that you're building. Through strategies like total cost of ownership and others, owners can prioritize and reduce lifecycle costs of those assets through starting with the end in mind. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the data journey and all these things that are not just possible within the Trimble ecosystem, but within your existing ecosystems, leveraging Trimble technologies. And there's many advantages to an asset-centric approach, and we'll touch on some of those today. So this is a little bit of the humble brag slide, but I look at this slide personally, and first of all, say thank you to all of those that are on this call and maybe looking at this for the first time. It's kind of daunting, actually, to look at this, knowing that we have so much of your data and your projects and your capital programs being managed within our solutions. It's actually really motivating for me to see this, because it's one, it's kind of gratifying, but two, I think it's super motivating because it drives Trimble to for me personally, it just drives me to want to innovate harder and get out and meet more customers to hear how you're using the technology and figure out new and exciting ways to leverage the technology that we have. And Michael will share a little bit more about the roadmap in the future, but boy, is it exciting. Lots of opportunity and obligation that we have to you as our customers to innovate, continue to innovate, and drive more efficiencies. So next slide, please. So kind of level setting the end state vision. Why have we kind of hitched our wagon to something like asset lifecycle management? As I said earlier, it's starting with the end in mind, but it's an opportunity to rethink and kind of innovate on established workflows that many of you have been executing for a very long time. But to innovate through the lens of improved data flow and the improved decisions and outcomes that result from this, the improved flow of the data. As you will see in the upcoming slides, y'all have a data problem. I think everyone knows it and lives it, and it's okay that we have a data problem. I just need you to hear that it's okay, and we know that, and we are bringing solutions to you to help solve that. And one of the things that makes Trimble unique is the fact that we have actually solutions that cover the gamut of the asset life cycle. So in looking at the slide that we have up here, let's dig into this a little bit. So if you consider the perfect world, this is the ideal state, excuse me, as Trimble sees it. Our customers in the Nordics, as an example, actually live this. Because everything that they do is done digitally, and they leverage solutions in their part of the world that we're introducing in this part of the world that enable that line to be an upward trajectory. And as the volume of data is created on the project starts small in planning, that same data scales through the context of a 3D model as data attached to the objects in that model and stays illuminated throughout the life cycle. Remember the word illuminated. This is what's possible in the ALM ecosystem that Trimble's bringing to the market through our connected data environment that enables data to be where it needs to be in the way it needs to be there, to be consumed and applied to result in better outcomes. That is the goal for everyone. But what's reality? Unfortunately, reality is this. It would be lovely to be able to say that everybody has a connected data environment that makes that curve smooth. Well, they don't, and very few do in the North American market, especially. So this is the reality. We have a ton of data. That's great news, but in most cases, we all have disparate systems, and that data lives in little dark closets. We call it dark data, and it doesn't have any real context to it, such as that as like a 3D model. Just a lot of ones and zeros, binary code. The other part that's difficult is that without that connected data environment, as you go through these phases, you get those dips and the data just disappears. It doesn't make the journey. And that could be a real challenge for companies trying to, like yourselves and agencies like yourselves that are trying to execute complicated programs that involve multiple projects. And it just serves as a force multiplier as the loss of that data and how the compounding loss of that data affects outcomes. What you end up at the end of the project is an incomplete record of what was constructed, and that is a problem. I like to tell a quick story about this. I won't use the name of the transit agency, but it's one that I know personally very well through experience. That agency finished up a $2.5 billion project. And at the end of it, they took delivery from the contractor of a 10 terabyte hard drive and 3 shipping containers full of paper. And that was their as-built data. Think about that for a minute. 3 shipping containers full of paper and 10 terabytes on a hard drive, none of which is referenced to a 3D model, and it's completely unstructured. So that agency utilized 35 FTE resources to actually manually enter the data into the asset management system over a 2-year period, just to get it into the system. And at the end of the project, only like 10% of all that data was usable. The way that Trimble views the world is that that's unnecessary, and we can get out in front of that now. So here we are. We are in the middle of the implementation of EJA. The generational funding, the most money that has ever hit the street for construction and infrastructure projects in the history of our country. And we have more money out there and more projects out there that we can get to. So the number of projects is going up. There's an unprecedented expectation on tracking and reporting Nick, if you could click through that slide, there you go. Unprecedented expectation on tracking and reporting, not just through the contract mechanism, but through expectations set in the contracts that say you need to give me this level of transparency. And then lastly, record construction labor shortage, right? We have not got enough people to do the work, especially enough skilled people. We have people retiring. We have shortages on the workforce, and there are so many challenges related to workforce development. I just last week was at the ARTBA National Conference, and one of the top things that was discussed as part of a CEO panel from Terracon, Kiewit, as well as Tykert, was the discussion about we need more employees. And they're to the point on their end where they're saying, just give me some good people with a good attitude, we'll train them, we'll give them a career. That's how, I don't want to use the word desperate, but it's almost to that point. So with all these things, you can see the mounting risk line on top of those different 4 sections. You have no choice now. Your agency has to transform digitally. You have to begin to find ways to leverage that data to do more with less. And you need in order to do that, some agencies are better at this than others, and some face different headwinds than others, whether it's budget or graying workforces, just the difficulties associated with making this transformation. So we're here to help you with that. Do we have all the answers? No, we don't. But what we do have are interoperable solutions that can connect to solutions that not just Trimble solutions, but solutions outside of Trimble. So here's a good way to visualize what it is we call asset lifecycle management. I personally like this diagram because it kind of simplifies it, right? You've got the design and build end, and then you've got the operate and maintain end. But in the middle of all of that is the connected data environment. And we call this the double infinity loop. And to my friends in marketing, I think this is one of my favorite things we've ever created. I absolutely love this. What is that? How does that actually play out for those that are on this call that use some of the existing solutions in this? You could click on the slide, Nick. This is where the different solutions, these are the actual individual solutions and where they fit on that continuum for asset lifecycle management. So there's a modicum of things that are available if you're an eBuilder user. You understand the digital project delivery side, but what about CityWorks over on the asset management side? CapEx, OpEx, there's like a hard dividing line there, right? In most agencies, we're trying to bridge that gap. We're trying to actually bring those sides together to think more about starting with the end in mind and having an asset-centric approach. Because when the data is able to move from digital project delivery through the life cycle of managing the asset, you'd make better decisions and you end up with lower costs of ownership. So I love this slide because a lot of the folks on this call, even though you're familiar with Trimble, did you know that we do all these things? These are just some of the workflows that Trimble covers in our ALM solutions. And a lot of people don't realize that, we have a Department of Transportation that manages their STIP inside of eBuilder, as an example. On the design side, we spend 44 of 50 DOTs are standardized on Trimble survey technology. They utilize that collection of that data and bring it into a 3D model in order to better utilize it and create better as-built data so that the assets can be operated and maintained more effectively at a lower cost. And then lastly, at the utopian scenario is a digital twin at the end of it, where you've got an as-maintained model. You create an as-built model because that's the easiest time to pull all that data together is during construction. And then you have an as-maintained model where you can literally operate and maintain all your assets off of a digital twin. It sounds like fantasy. It's not. They're doing it in countries like Norway, and it's being done using Trimble technology and other technology too. The key thing I want everybody to understand is we create interoperable, non-proprietary solutions that integrate into the Bentleys and the Autodesks of the world at a very deep feature set level, so that data can actually move around the way it needs to. So what is this? How does it look? How does it really look for an owner? And at the end of the day, we recognize it's a bit complicated to think about it. I think this diagram does a pretty good job of compartmentalizing what it really means. The key to the Trimble ecosystem for ALM is not only making our internal solutions for systems of record interoperable, but making them work with non-Trimble systems too, as I mentioned in the last slide. It's so important. We can't be all things to all people. We don't expect to be. Thus, our approach to the market is non-proprietary. We don't want to bring things to bear that are going to constrain your ability to have data flow around the asset lifecycle the way that it needs to, so that you could get done what you need to get done faster and with less effort and less people and less resources. As the world of construction tech evolves rapidly around us, we want to make sure, help your agency be ready to embrace and leverage it to make the most of this amazing time in our industry. There's a whole lot more we could say here, but I think my time is about up. Thank you so much for your time today. And for those that may not be in the loop on this, mark your calendars, May 14th to 16 in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. I was born and raised in Cleveland, and I'm very proud that we're having this conference there. Mark your calendars, May 14 through 16. All of the owner-based conferences for Trimble are being compiled into one, and we're excited to host you all at a really exciting event that's going to basically reset all of our expectations around what an owner conference could look like. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Back to you, Nick.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Doug, for that great part of the presentation. That's just the first taste for this morning. We'll continue on with our day and hand it over to Luke and Joe. Morning, guys. Welcome.
Good morning. Hope everyone is up and chipper.
Good morning, everybody.
And enjoyed. I always am impressed with the work that Doug and his team do with sharing that vision and understanding where we're headed. Because sometimes I think people can be doing their day-to-days and get a little bit of a tunnel vision of what goes on and say, man, I really wish we could do more. And it's nice to see that Trimble is making that making that vision open and sharing and constantly changing based on what our clients and our partners are involved. So I have a privilege of introducing Luke Van Santen. Some of you may know Luke, maybe just from living in the neighborhood, so to speak, up in Minneapolis. But Luke, would you mind just introducing yourself and kind of giving a background of what you do and where you are now?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. My name is Luke Van Santen. I am currently a principal business analyst, project controls analyst with HNTB. I recently moved over to this position after almost 25 years with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. The last 18 or so of which I was dealing.
Hey, Luke, you're breaking up a little bit.
With eBuilder on transit project. Become familiar with me through meeting me at eBuilder conference builder supports. Okay, I will try and find a better sound environment then. But good to meet you all, everybody.
No, Luke, okay. You were just coming out of it. Okay. Try it now, Luke.
Is the sound okay now?
Yeah, of course, as soon as I ask, it happens on live. When you do a live recording, when you ask somebody something, that's when it fixes itself. So I apologize.
Exactly.
So Luke, let me get into this from this. But by the way, I apologize. I'm Joe Carton. I'm part of Trimble's O&PS partner team. I work with firms like HNTB and probably a lot of firms that you all work with to help improve the quality of your processes, whether it be from an asset management side or from the program management side. And so I get to work with great firms and great people like Luke at HNTB. So Luke, you have an interesting perspective. The fact that you've been doing this work from the owner side for a number of years, both with Minnesota DOT, correct, as well as spending quite a bit of time at how long have you were with Met Council?
The work there started in about 2006, so pushing 18 years, 17, 18 years we were working there.
Outstanding. And what was your I might be asking what your responsibility was over at Met Council?
When I first started back in the day, I was using an alternate, not to be named, project management information system that had kind of been grandfathered in from our Hiawatha light rail project, the original Blue Line. And I was the system administrator for that. And that's kind of carried forward through all of the different iterations of products that we've used. Fortunately, we were able to get to eBuilder relatively soon in that overall history. And I've just been continuing forward with that since then.
So let me ask you, in the role that you've had within working with owners, I know you've come over to HNTB and is looking to try to do the same kind of take some of the guidance that you've had with that. What were you finding either at Met Council or even your work with Minnesota DOT? What kind of like I'll use the overused phrase best practices or common themes that you found for success when we talk about not only program management but asset lifecycle management as a whole?
I will start with and not quite answer the asset lifecycle management portion of that, Joe.
Okay.
But I'll start with the construction, project management, cost management, document/record/information management approach. And that is that first and foremost, you really have to have a good system. You can have a mediocre system, and that just makes the second part that I'm going to touch on here in a second way harder. So if you have a good system set up from the get-go that can be really responsive to what you need to do rather than how it wants you to do things, you're going to be positioned very, very well. The second most important, maybe co-equal most important best practice is to make sure that you have, and this is buzzword bingo for a second, sorry, executive buy-in. You really, really, really have to have that support from everybody all the way from the top down to make sure that, okay, we've got this good system. Let's use it and take advantage of the benefits it gives us. We're, as owners, we've always been super concerned with, as public agencies and owners, we've always been super concerned with trying to be as good a steward of the public's money as we can. And if we're spending money on a system like this, by gosh, we really want to use it and maximize the return we're seeing from it. So those are the two best practices that really pop out thinking back on my time at MnDOT and Met Council.
And that makes sense. I mean, you can't if you can't get people to understand why you're doing it, they're not going to do it. And if you can't get the people who are going to support it and finance it, then you're not going to get very far. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, on one level, on one level, you can have people that maybe don't fully understand the benefits, and that level tends to be more towards the a former boss used to call it the tip of the spear. The people actually out engaging, doing the work. Having to stand in the snowstorm while they're putting pipe together. You name it. Those are the ones that maybe have to know what they need to do within the system. But you don't necessarily have to have the full vision on all levels, but you do have to have it at certain levels. Yeah,
makes sense. And that's a good point to look at when we're discussing this with clients. Is like when you're talking within your team, it's like it's not just we see it as a good idea internally, but where does the impact beyond our fiefdom or our areas, right? We think sometimes people don't see the forest through the trees. And I think that's kind of what you guys see as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's, in all fairness too, it's really hard to see the forest when you're looking at a tree you can barely wrap your arms around. So I'm not trying to throw stones or anything. I get it. I've been there, but somebody who can see the forest, they really need to be supportive and championing any kind of effort you have to have a system like this.
Well, it makes sense. So before we move forward, I want to make sure that people realize this. I mean, Luke and I can talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and we have. But my want to make sure that if people have any questions, I want this to be more of a dialogue, this section of our meeting here. So there's a Q&A section that you guys should be able to see towards the bottom where you can ask us questions. And Luke and I are always like, we love questions. Sometimes we don't answer them, but we love them anyway. No, we just want to make sure that we're answering, where what people are thinking of while we're talking about this topic, because it can be good. This is something where, you'd like to do this in person because you start hearing, oh yeah, I know about this, or well, how do you handle this? I mean, we'd love to hear some of those.
Those were always the best sessions that either when I was presenting or when I was attending at the eBuilder conferences I would go to in the past, where somebody would ask a question and it just spawned so much really helpful discussion. And all of a sudden you had this energy building and people were so into it and really wanting to do more. And that's kind of why I was bummed. I mean, I'm happy to still be here, don't get me wrong, but I was really kind of bummed that we weren't going to be able to meet in person, because that's where stuff like that can really, really take off. So yes, I'll second and third Joe's statement. Please, if you have questions, throw them in and we'll try and get to them.
Throw them in the Q&A and we'll be happy to address them. So also nice little plug to say, hey, it wouldn't be a bad idea if you're going to be a customer or going to be a client coming to our event in May. So I'm sure Luke's already angling to get down there in Cleveland.
Need to figure that out. Yep.
So you talked about team buy-in, and I think I want to explore that just a little bit, because it sounds easy. Just guys, I'm going to show you a PowerPoint presentation. We should do this. What kind of things have you had to do from an owner's perspective to kind of get people to understand beyond the area that you're in where the value might be? And this is where I look at ALM kind of has evolved over, asset lifecycle management kind of evolved over that time, right? It's usually departments saying, well, wait a minute, I need that information from you. How am I going to get it? I used to joke all the time that because I've done construction for 25 years prior to this, that asset turnover used to be, hey, Bob, go grab the file cabinets from the job site and drop it in the basement for anybody to ask us any questions. And unfortunately, that can be still happening, except for the file cabinets, it becomes what? Here, I put it on a Google Drive, or I put it on a box.com. It's out there. Trust me, we're going to go now. And then the other side would be asset people, or the project program management said, okay, we're going to be redoing this highway. Where are all those things that you guys have been managing the asset? Oh, it's in here somewhere, looking like this. Like, what are those kind of things? I assume you've had those kind of conversations on a buy-in perspective to understand where the data is going and how what you're doing and where it impacts other groups. Does that be fair?
No, it's not totally fair, but I'll give it a shot anyways.
Okay. Well, this talks about the forest of the tree sometimes, right?
Yep. So a lot of times people, and I've certainly fallen into this or been happily engaged in it, people are really, really focused on the tasks that are directly in front of them. And I'll call it the short term, right? We want to get the project built and turned over. And so that's one level of perspective that is really super powerful and good in its own limited way. But then you've got to take it up a level and see, okay, from a program level, how is this project that they're building out there going to fit in with our overall system? And then you have to take it up one more level if you really want to get that kind of buy-in, to have somebody at that third level who can see not just the forest, but the desert and the ocean and all of these other things, like, hey, there's a gravity wave coming from the next galaxy that's going to impact how we do stuff. And I'm getting a little wacky here, sorry, but you have to be able to see all of that stuff that maybe is going to impact your world and be able to say, okay, when that happens, because I can see it coming, this is how we're going to be able to respond, by having all of this data in a place where we can immediately access it and know that it's accurate, and then take actions to get in front of these things. So, and that third level really kind of depends on how your organization is structured or becomes structured. So
No, I mean, I mean, what we're trying to do is tell people that it's not as daunting as it may seem, but there is actually, you know, having a plan and seeing how it impacts other people. Let me ask this question. So we've been talking more about internal buy-in. What about external buy-in? And this may play into where a firm like HNTB gets involved. And I can't think there are many people on this call who don't know who HNTB are. But when we talk about our partners, they're usually people that firms are already working with, right? I mean, how important is to have the buy-in or the conversation with firms like you guys when they're looking at how they do what they want to do, or the feasibility of getting it done based on having another set of eyes in the room? You've been on both sides. You've worked with firms like your own firm now. I'm kind of curious as to, you know, how do you see that when it comes to, you know, program management and even on a higher level, asset management and financial management, when it comes to looking at this whole ALM type of concept?
I'm gonna, I think, take your question in a little bit of an unexpected direction after I answer it.
Okay.
The external input to get buy-in, you know, as a consultant now, I'm with a group of people that have just an amazing amount of experience in lots of different places using all kinds of systems. They've been through all kinds of good things and bad things, and they really have a solid basis to provide recommendations about systems to use. And so if you have access to that external kind of input, that can really provide support and strengthen your internal development of support for a system like this. The unexpected direction maybe here is, as a city, and definitely as a state agency where I was before, and everywhere in between, there's a pretty high expectation from the public that you're able to do things and that you understand things and you know where everything is. And you know, that's something to maybe include in your considerations as well. You know, if you say, to kind of use Joe's example, you know, well, when the citizen calls and says, hey, this is the fourth time you've been out here digging up this water pipe, what the heck's going on? And all you can say is, well, I got to run down the basement and look and see where all of our logs are in that file cabinet we brought in at the completion of that project we finished 10 years ago. You know, that maybe doesn't instill the greatest confidence. I know, having done things like that before, I felt a little bit embarrassed. So that's one of the reasons why I always enjoy being around Doug, because he is such a super evangelist for systems like this. It just really makes me want to help everybody get to points like this with asset lifecycle management, just so we can all do our jobs better, we can do them more efficiently, we can meet all of those expectations from all of our customers.
Yeah, the one thing I get, and I'll throw this phrase out to you, and when I talk, especially in the industries, and I could pick transportation, I could pick water, I could pick healthcare, I could pick any of them, and the things when I've sat into meetings, they say, well, we're just like so and so, we're just like these guys. Why can't I just have something that's just like what they're doing? And then when you ask them a question like, so how do you handle a change order process, or how do you handle it? Oh, well, we don't do it like that. We do it like da, 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 but we're the same. How do you work with a group? And again, I think that also plays into the ALM message, is that people go, well, and I'll give you another one. I've had it where I've had people at asset management and program management in the same room, and the big issue they talk about is trying to eliminate double entry. And one side will first say it, well, we don't double entry. They enter it wrong and we enter it right. How do you bridge that conversation? And I'm sure that's never happened before, Luke, and all the times you've worked where you hear something like that, where there's a disconnect. And I don't think that's a forest of the trees. I think it's just a miscommunication of what the expectations are. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to get your take on something like that.
Well, the first part of your question, you know, how do you account for people being exactly the same and entirely different all at the same time, is by having a system that can meet those differences without having to, without forcing limitations on the business units or the agencies. If you do a change order and it's exactly the same as this other entity's change order, except you have this one extra step where it has to go to somebody for an approval. If you have a system that can address that can accommodate that, you're going to be way ahead. And yes, then you are getting back into more of, yep, we're exactly the same with just one tiny difference. I apologize. The train of thought for my second part of the question just left.
It's okay. Well, again, as more talking about, the double entry issue or the not understanding where the process is going because, and again, not the force of the trees, just not knowing what that other group needs to do.
Well, there's a little bit of a confounding situation there with data ownership and data privacy, right? But if you can have, I'll go back to what I said for the first part. If you have a system that is extensible and can accommodate all these different things, you can extend it out so that it meets all of your various partners' needs, like your contractor, like your city stakeholder, like the county, like any regulatory agencies. If you're capturing that data all in one place where they can get it back out in the way they need it, then you're going to take huge steps away from that double entry and become even more efficient. And, like I said, though, too, there's a little bit of concern there. And we encountered this with, contractors and with consultants, pretty much everybody, when we were using eBuilder at Metro Transit, Metropolitan Council. They would, I very much supported them in things like that and said, I'll extend the system to meet whatever you need. And they said, well, we thank you for your offer, but this system is the owner's system.
Yeah.
And as such, we don't feel that the data we would put into it would be secure enough from our corporate perspective. So having a system that can do all of those things easily and let people get the data back out the way they need it, that's probably the biggest way to get away from double entry, triple entry.
Yeah. And sometimes
but getting it back out is probably the biggest thing. I mean, obviously you can't get it back out if it doesn't put in right in the first place, but that's what leads people to say, well, I can't get eBuilder to put this out the way I need it, so I'm going to just maintain my own spreadsheet still.
The other piece that I've seen is when, especially more now that we're part of this whole ALM structure, where Trimble's doing a really nice job of putting these pieces in, is looking at it's the old joke about I got to pour the foundation for your building, so you have to tell me how big the building is going to be eventually. Well, we only need one floor, but are you going to need more? And sometimes what happens is you get that tunnel focus of one piece without looking at how that might impact, the rest of where you're going. And I'm curious if you've ever run into that, or if you see that as something that should also be considered. It used to be just, oh, well, finance has these cost codes, we don't make sure they're matched up the same way. But now what we're finding is the life of a project never ends. I mean, I know the taxpayers hate to hear that. Being a taxpayer, I'm from Pennsylvania, so we pay a lot of taxes to drive on the 47th best roads in America. Notice I said 47th best. But taking that into consideration, I'm one of those people that complain when I look out my back door or down the road and I have 3 highways right near me going, why are they still working on this? Why is this project not done? And what I have to remember and tell my neighbors without them yelling at me is a project never ends when you're talking about the public entity, right? How do you address, or how have you ever addressed talking about that continuity? And how do you see ALM being able to help that? If that's something you're wanting to take on there on that question.
Well, I guess a little bit of long ago history from my time at MnDOT is when technology like this didn't exist, there were decisions made to say, well, we know that we're going to finish this job and we know that we've built certain things underground where we can't easily see where they are.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's time to come back and rebuild or, upgrade, however you want to call it, we'll just come back and find them all then. Because we have a little bit of good technology that can work to find, and I guess not to be too opaque about this, it was dealing with storm sewers, right?
Hmm.
It's hard to say where those are after you've got the highway in. But we would come back and fly the corridor and grab the location of catch basins, manhole covers, what have you, through photogrammetric evaluations.
Okay.
Take pictures and then be able to find stuff like that. And we can get rid of that need if we just capture the data in the first place, right?
Yep.
And it even then enables other things. And, Joe, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. If you know with certainty where your system is and where those connections are, then all of a sudden when a fuel tanker overturns and starts spilling into your storm sewer system, you need to know where to go to try and either block it or to start setting the booms up when it discharges into a river or a creek, And it's just, if you have to call the inspector and say, hey, where did that storm sewer run go when you built it 7 years ago? You're kind of out of luck again, right?
No, and that's a great example. I mean, what we're looking at from that standpoint of the continuity. So we've got a couple minutes left. So I just want to wrap up with this, and I'm wrapping up with a very open-ended conversation piece here. Is it where do you see the future for ALM when it comes to an owner? Where do you see the biggest benefits that you would like to see coming down the pike, or do you see coming down the pike that they should be aware of? And I'm talking more conceptually, not necessarily about the tools themselves. If that's fair. Like maybe there's one area that you think might make sense for people to be aware of or looking at going forward.
Well, this is definitely a projection, but once we get to a point where owners have an ALM or a BIM, whatever acronym you want, a digital twin, certain parts of that are really going to lend themselves to automated monitoring. So you can monitor vibration on a pump motor from afar, right? You don't have to run out to that particular station and do your check every month. You can just say, okay, vibration's been getting worse on that pump motor for the last 3 months. Let's just pull the trigger now and go replace it. Same kind of thing with, stray voltage detection systems, or insert your favorite variety of infrastructure here, right? With any kind of overall system that has all of this stuff in it in a geographic way, and then add in this, I don't think it's a passe buzzword yet. Maybe it is. I'm just out of the loop. But this Internet of Things, where you've got a little sensor out there monitoring the flow on your storm sewer or on your sanitary or what have you, and all of a sudden that little device is telling you, hey, flow has gone way up. Even worse, it's gone way down. Where's it all going? That can give you that huge then proactive benefit to managing your system. You can get out there and take care of things before some citizen out walking the dog says, wow, it's kind of smelly over here, and I think I see something bubbling up out of the ground over there. What's going on?
Yeah.
You can get ahead of that. And it's just being able to perform duties at that level is just so attractive from trying to get problems solved perspective, in my opinion.
I agree, Luke. And I like I said, you and I could talk about this for hours, and I know we'll plan on talking more later about this. And I'm sure at the conference in May as well. Luke, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. And by the way, we'll share Luke's contact information as well for those who are on the call that would like to talk with Luke about some of the work he's done, and what he's doing with HNTB. And we really appreciate partners like HNTB assisting our teams here today. So thanks, Luke.
Oh, I sure appreciate the chance to be here. Thank y'all.
Yeah, passing it back to you, Nick.
Yeah, Luke, Joe, great back and forth. Luke, thanks for all your insights on that. And yes, we will have email address if you do want to reach out. So for the final part of our presentation today, we're going to hand it over to Mike. He's going to do a little deep dive into CityWorks. So Mike, hand it off to you. The floor is yours for the next 10-ish minutes. And then we should still have a few minutes at the end for some Q&A. But yeah, Mike, take it away.
Awesome. Well, appreciate that, Nick. Great job, Luke and Joe. Very insightful. And good morning, everyone. Appreciate you all taking the time this morning to join us. And for those of you who don't know me, first of all, it's great to see so many names on the list that are familiar. My name is Michael Romano. I am a local government EAM customer success team lead, kind of coming historically from the CityWorks side of the business. So what I'm going to do today is really go through the CityWorks product roadmap and what's new. We've been putting a lot of great research and development into the roadmap, into new added functionality and enhancements for you all. And I'm really excited to show you what is on the horizon for new CityWorks enhancements. So before I go into any of that, I just got to flash this again, being publicly traded. Just want to let you all know, this is informational purposes today. And this morning, again, I am very excited to show you, but please just don't go, buying new software or, adding anything into RFPs or things like that, buying, Trimble stock based on what you're seeing today. Again, informational purposes, and we, those CityWorks customers, we will do a very good job of communicating when these are released and give you as much information as possible. So it's kind of starting off, I have a video to play, and I'm going to speak to it as it's playing a little bit here. So one of the bigger resources and I guess initiatives we're putting forward is updating the map within Respond. Here, those of you CityWorks customers see this and kind of it looks familiar from the Respond side. So what we're doing is moving to the CalSite design system. And our vision is to match Esri's new design and developmental resources, primarily in what you're seeing here, the UX UI model. This will give the users a more consistent Esri-like map experience, and on our end allows us to really speed up the GIS development. As you can see, there's no icons running across the top bar anymore. The top left, you can see we've really simplified the selection tools. And as you can see again here, all those tools and toolbars are really docked on the right-hand side. So a number of reasons why we've done this. One is, hopefully on our end, it really makes your map experience quicker and hopefully easier for your end users who are very used to working in the Esri maps, like field maps environment. Hopefully makes the migration to Respond down the road a little bit easier and more feasible. So lastly, you can see, it was just shown, from the developer side, you can really see which APIs are actually being in play. So for those of you who don't know, on CityWorks side, we have two really main products or modules: the AMS, the Asset Management System, and then PLL, which is a permitting software. What I showed earlier from the map, just the last slide, really goes between both the AMS and PLL. On this side, I really want to focus on the PLL side. So we've really put in a lot of enhancements and again, time and dedication to updating our PLL notifications. So the ultimate goal for this enhancement is to really be able to notify anyone internally or externally when anything becomes, changed or available, such as, new tasks becoming available, case expires, contractor licenses expired, things like that. So we recognize we even want to take, it one step further and notify, when is, this case X days from being due, or is this fee X days from being due? Notify you when it's X days from being expired, or notify when it's actually been scheduled. So we were really putting a lot of effort into this, as well as, increasing those overall notification triggers, allowing more flexibility of who can get those notifications, who those notifications are sent to, track the notification history, and just overall better configuration options for those notifications depending on workflows internally. The next two slides, I really am excited. I'm excited for everything, of course, but I'm really excited for these next two slides here. highlighting Respond and the new look and feel to the Respond interface. So the first one here is what we're looking at, again, Respond. For those of you who may not be familiar with the CityWorks Respond product, it's the core work activity, work orders, inspections, service requests, dashboarding, solution and product on the CityWorks AMS side, NPLL side. Again, right here, we're looking at, again, Respond dashboarding capability specifically. So again, those of you familiar with Respond, historically, you've had to kind of go drop down, select those dashboards. What we've done is added those dashboard options along the top. Again, kind of in an easier way to look and select those dashboards as you're going through. So again, less clicks, of course, the better. And that is our hope with this particular enhancements, just easier user experience. The next one is also in the Respond application. It looks similar to the last slide, but here we're really focused on the work order page. And again, what we've done is we've docked the functions within the work order to the top bar here as well. Again, historically, we in previous versions and kind of what's available right now, we've had those docked functions, details, asset readings, attachments, Helm, tasks, all hidden within a button. We have to drop down and select. Again, here making it visible to the user right here on the work order tab. Hopefully, again, it eliminates the need to go through, have additional clicks, things like that. Again, hopefully as easy as possible for that user experience and user interface here. The next one is a reporting app, and I know CityWorks customers, we hear you loud and clear, and we are really doing our best to get that reporting function within Respond. So this is, again, kind of maybe a sneak peek of how it will look like on the Respond side and application. Now, what I can say is when we come to the new Respond reporting solution, we will offer a migration tool to convert your historical Crystal reports over to the new report file, just kind of like what we've offered if you're familiar with the Safe Search, the query migration tool, something along those same lines. It may not bring it over perfectly, but at least gives you a starting point for that report. We do have an active testing process going on right now where we're getting feedback from trial customers and hopefully incorporate those feedbacks into future iterations. So this is, again, kind of what it looks like. You'll see, on the side menu, there's an employee relates component to prevent just anyone from accessing this report. Again, different permissions will be in here. You'll be able to unlock, enable a lot of things this enhancement overall will be able to unlock and enable a lot of things that we've, from the CityWorks side and you as customers, have really been trying to do from the Response side. Lastly, we recognize this shift to the new reporting solution will be a steep learning curve. We understand that, and we're going to do our best, of course, from the customer success side and of course, all the CSMs around the country to educate and provide you all with the best documentations on My CityWorks to hopefully alleviate that learning curve or the issues within the learning curve and just make that transition as easy as possible for everyone. The last slide here, I'm going to play this one to get this one going because it's a little bit lengthier, focusing on enhancements to our mobile application. So this middle one here is just looking at a workflow of creating a work order kind of on a tabular or related object level using a mobile map package. Think of offline using a pump station for a pump, for example. And again, just kind of going through that workflow. Again, those of you who are familiar with the mobile application, you'll probably see a little bit of a difference here of, again, just the way it looks, feels, and overall acts on the mobile side. I'm going to let this play, but talk to the screenshot on the left here, which is looking at the mobile inboxes. This is the new mobile inbox layout, and I'm really excited to see this and see how it really can be used from a customer standpoint, because it really gives the customer and the user a couple different global inbox options. Scan barcode, the ability to expand, collapse, and the sorting really gives you a couple different options. You can set, primary, secondary, sort by ascending, descending, things like that. I'm going to stop this one and play this last video, which is looking at, again, the same inbox, but looking at how you can create activity or different activity actions within the new inbox layout. For example, this is looking at creating a child work order based off of a parent work order and kind of a quick little workflow. I'll play that again because it is kind of short. So again, those of you familiar with the current mobile app and the one that you've been utilizing, this again has a little bit of an updated user interface and experience feel, especially from the inbox standpoint. So with that's all I have to share from the product roadmap side. I'll again say thank you all for hopping on and joining us this morning. If there are any questions regarding the roadmap, I know there's several CityWorks customers on the line. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk more in depth on some of these enhancements, demos, things like that. So appreciate the time, everyone. Thanks, Nick. Turn it back to you.
Yeah, great job, Mike. Great job, everybody. Doug, if you want to jump back, actually, if everyone wants to jump back on camera, Luke and Joe as well. We've only got a couple minutes left. If any questions do come through, we'd be happy to take them over the next couple minutes. But if not, Doug, do you want to bring it home? You want to bring this home before we wrap up?
That's a big ask, Nick. I mean, we had some big hitters on this thing today. I've never been much of a cleanup hitter. I was always kind of like a leadoff guy, kind of a punch and Judy player. But what I would say is I took a couple of notes as I was listening. I so appreciate Luke's experience and the just the matter of fact way he carries himself and says what he says. He speaks truths. And he does so in a no nonsense Minnesota kind of way, and I appreciate that about him. The storm sewer example was it resonated with me because it highlighted the importance of geolocated data, as built data, as maintained data, and why you would aspire to get to a digital twin. If there's a problem with that sewer, you want to get out in front of that as quickly as possible and be able to answer the bell as soon as it hits. The other example he gave that I loved on the AI side was the pump. If a pump, it's the opportunity to go from a preventive maintenance model to a predictive maintenance model. And asset lifecycle management is going to make that. You can't do it without being able to get the data from the different stages of construction. That was exciting to me. Replace the pump before it fails. Don't wait till it fails and you have an environmental disaster on your hands. Let's replace the pump before it fails. And then lastly, the roadmap stuff from Michael, huge UI improvements. The mobile app stuff was that's amazing to me. As well, and the reporting for a lot of reasons, because it's a way to visualize this data, visualize all the things, and leverage that data within the asset management system that can sometimes often get created way earlier in the process. So with that, Nick, those were some takeaways I had. Thank you all. I hope I get a chance to meet all of you individually at some point. That was my little wrap up.
No, that was great. And with no questions, you guys clearly explained everything so perfectly that we don't have any questions. But if you have any that you want to follow up on, and maybe you don't want to share it with the group, whatnot, Luke's email's there, Mike's email's there, Doug's email's there. Feel free to reach out to them. And if you're curious, Doug talked about this connecting systems in this ALM. We have a webinar tomorrow about getting more data from your program, from your capital program with Trimble's eBuilder data warehouse. So we do have that coming up tomorrow. If anyone's interested, I think my email was in the Zoom invite. So feel free to reach out to me if you didn't get an invite to it or interested in that. You can also go to our website to find that. But yeah, I mean, anything else, Luke, Mike, Joe, we'll sign off for the day and just give everybody a thank you unless anyone has anything else to say.
It's nice to meet you all. Hopefully we'll do it in person someday.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Agreed. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you again for joining, and we'll see you for our next